Welcome back to the Shadow Journal. Tonight, I want you to go back in time with me to the year 1898. Imagine an ordinary family home in London or New York. A mother opens her medicine cabinet to find a cure for her child's persistent cough. She reaches for a small, elegant glass bottle. The label on the bottle is professional, reassuring. It bears the logo of Bayer, one of the most trusted pharmaceutical companies in Germany. And in bold, golden letters, it reads, Heroin. In 1898, heroin wasn't sold in dark alleys. It wasn't injected in the shadows of broken buildings. It was a wonder drug, sold over the counter as a safe, non-addictive substitute for morphine. Doctors prescribed it for everything: coughs, asthma, even for children who couldn't sleep. The world believed it had found a hero, hence the name. But behind the beautiful labels and the scientific promises, a monster was being born. A monster that would eventually claim millions of lives, destabilize nations, and create a shadow empire of crime that still haunts us today. Tonight, we unseal the dossier on the most addictive substance known to man. From the pristine labs of Imperial Germany to the blood-stained streets of the modern world. This is the tragic history of heroin. Chapter 1. The Birth of a Hero. The story of heroin begins with a failure of good intentions. In the late 19th century, the medical world was facing a crisis: morphine addiction. Thousands of people, including soldiers from the American Civil War, were hopelessly enslaved to morphine. The chemical giants of the era were racing to find a god molecule, a substance that had the pain-killing power of morphine, but without its terrifying grip of addiction. In 1897, a chemist at Bayer named Felix Hoffmann, the same man who would invent aspirin, just days later succeeded in modifying the morphine molecule. By adding two acetyl groups, he created diacetylmorphine. Visual: a 19th century chemist in a white apron, his face half hidden in shadow, working with glass tubes that emit a faint, ghostly white vapor. When Bayer's employees tested it, they didn't feel lethargic or sick. They felt heroic. They felt powerful, energized, and completely free of pain. Bayer believed they had achieved the impossible. They marketed it as heroin, a name derived from the German word heroisch. Bayer launched a global marketing campaign. They claimed heroin was 10 times more effective as a cough suppressant than codeine, and most importantly, they told the world it was not addictive. For 5 years, the world fell in love with the hero. It was exported to 23 countries. It was the aspirin for the soul. But the doctors had missed a fundamental biological truth. Heroin isn't a different drug from morphine. It is a supercharged version of it. Inside the human body, heroin crosses the blood-brain barrier 3 times faster than morphine. Once it reaches the brain, it converts back into morphine, hitting the nervous system like a tidal wave of artificial pleasure. By the time the medical world realized their mistake, it was already too late. The hero had turned into a villain. Chapter 2. The Soldier's Disease and the First Collapse. By the early 1900s, the wonder drug started to show its dark side. In the hospitals of New York and Philadelphia, a new kind of patient began to arrive. These weren't sick people. They were shadows of people. They were thin, their eyes were hollow, and they were desperate. They were the first generation of heroin addicts. The realization was a global shock. The drug that was supposed to cure morphine addiction was actually creating an addiction that was much more intense and much harder to break. In 1913, under immense pressure, Bayer stopped producing heroin. But the fire was already out of the bottle. Visual: a dark, grainy silhouette of a man leaning against a brick wall in a 1920s alleyway, holding his head in his hands, cinematic noir lighting. As governments began to ban the drug, the price skyrocketed. This created the perfect environment for the birth of the black market. Heroin moved from the pharmacy to the docks. It became the currency of the underworld. In the 1920s and 30s, the French Connection began to take shape. Raw opium from the poppy fields of Turkey was smuggled to secret labs in Marseille, France, where it was refined into high-grade white China heroin and shipped to the ports of New York. The hero was now a fugitive. It was no longer a medicine. It was a ghost that haunted the ghettos and the jazz clubs. But its greatest expansion was yet to come, and it would be fueled by the fires of war. Chapter 3: The Vietnam Shadow, the Golden Triangle. If the labs of Germany gave birth to heroin, the jungles of Southeast Asia made it a global superpower. During the Vietnam War, in the 1960s and 70s, the United States military faced an invisible enemy more dangerous than the Viet Cong: 90% pure heroin. In the region known as the Golden Triangle, where the borders of Thailand, Burma, and Laos meet, local warlords were producing massive amounts of high-quality heroin. It was cheap, it was everywhere, and it was devastatingly pure. Visual: aerial view of a misty jungle mountain range at twilight, transitioning to a close-up of a soldier's hand holding a small plastic bag of white powder. Thousands of American soldiers, stressed by the horrors of war and the fear of death, turned to the White Lady for comfort. It was estimated that up to 15% of all U.S. servicemen in Vietnam were addicted to heroin. But the shadow mystery of this era lies in how the drug reached the United States. Chilling reports and investigative files suggested that some of this heroin was being smuggled back to America in the body bags of fallen soldiers. The very people who died for their country were being used as vessels to poison the next generation. When the war ended and the soldiers came home, they brought the addiction with them. The heroin epidemic of the 1970s tore through American cities like an earthquake, leading to a rise in crime and a new era of police war on drugs. Chapter 4: The Biological Trap. Why the brain surrenders. To understand why heroin is the ultimate shadow, we must look inside the human brain, the most complex machine in the known universe. Our brains are designed to reward us for survival. When we eat, when we fall in love, or when we achieve a goal, the brain releases a small, natural dose of dopamine. It is a whisper of pleasure that tells us, "Do this again." But heroin does not whisper. It screams. When heroin enters the brain, it mimics our natural painkillers, called endorphins, but with 1,000 times the intensity. It floods the reward system, releasing a tidal wave of dopamine that no natural human experience can ever match. For the user, it feels like being wrapped in a warm blanket of pure light. Every pain, every worry, every trauma is erased in an instant. But there is a heavy price for this artificial heaven. The brain is adaptive. When it senses this massive overload of dopamine, it begins to shut down its own natural production. It dims the lights to protect itself. After only a few uses, the user's brain can no longer feel pleasure from normal things. Food tastes like ash. Music sounds like noise. The love of a family feels cold. The only thing that can make the brain feel normal, again, is more heroin. This is the hook. The hero has stolen the keys to your happiness and locked you in a cellar of despair. If you stop, the withdrawal is a living hell bone-crushing pain, cold sweats, and a soul-deep sickness. The user is no longer chasing a high. They are simply running away from the pain of being alive. Chapter 5. The Corporate Ghost, the Sackler Betrayal. As we moved into the late 1990s, the world thought the heroin epidemic was a ghost of the past. But in the boardrooms of a company called Purdue Pharma, a new and even more dangerous chapter was being written. The Sackler family, the owners of Purdue, launched a drug called OxyContin. They marketed it with a lie that echoed the Bayer campaign of 1898. They told doctors that this powerful opioid was virtually non-addictive. They sent thousands of sales representatives to small towns across America, targeting regions where people did hard physical labor, mining towns, fishing villages, and farming communities. Doctors began prescribing OxyContin like it was candy. But OxyContin is essentially pill-form heroin. It is chemically almost identical. When the government finally realized the scale of the addiction and restricted the prescriptions, millions of people were already hooked. Suddenly, their legal pills were gone, and they were desperate. The shadow was waiting for them. The cartels saw an opportunity. They flooded these same small towns with cheap, high-grade Mexican heroin. A person who started with a doctor's prescription for a back injury often ended up with a needle in their arm in a dark alley. The Sackler family made billions of dollars, while a new great opioid crisis began to bury a generation. The hero had returned, but this time he was wearing a business suit. Chapter 6. The Final Shadow, the Era of Fentanyl. Now, in 2026, we have reached the darkest point of the dossier. The hero has evolved into something far more lethal. In the secret labs of the underworld, chemists have moved away from the poppy fields. They are now creating synthetic opioids, the most famous of which is fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. It is so powerful that a dose the size of a few grains of salt is enough to kill a grown man. The cartels are now mixing fentanyl into heroin, cocaine, and even fake Xanax pills to make them more addictive and cheaper to produce. The users often have no idea they are taking it. This is why we are seeing a record-breaking number of overdose deaths globally. It isn't an overdose. It is a poisoning. Fentanyl has no smell, no taste, and no mercy. It is the ultimate expression of the shadow, a chemical so potent that it bypasses all human choice. The journey that began in a German lab with the hope of curing pain has ended in a global morgue. Conclusion: the price of peace. As we close the file on heroin tonight, we see a recurring theme in the Shadow Journal. Humans have an ancient, desperate desire to escape pain. We want a shortcut to heaven. We want a hero to save us from the hardships of life. But the history of heroin teaches us that there is no such thing as a free escape. Every moment of artificial peace bought from a bottle or a needle is borrowed from your future. The hero always comes back to collect the debt, and he always takes more than he gave. The real tragedy is that we keep falling for the same lie, generation after generation. From Bayer to the Sacklers, the shadow keeps changing its mask, but its hunger for our souls remains the same. Tonight, as you lie in your bed, appreciate the natural rhythm of your mind. Appreciate the ability to feel both joy and pain, because to feel pain is to be alive, and to be alive is to be free. You don't need a chemical hero. You are the architect of your own sanctuary. Breathe in. Feel the natural dopamine of a quiet night. Breathe out. Let go of the need for an artificial exit. The files are closing. The shadows are still. Sleep well and stay in the light. Good night, and until the next entry in the Shadow Journal.